Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Kayle top lane. They're pretty set in stone. The things that Kayle wants from runes is like survivability to scale into the late game. You don't really need scaling from the runes themselves, as you have so much scaling in the champion's kit and then in the champion's item build, and mostly just through levels. So it's really just about making Kayle's early game safer and then having something that helps her just a little bit come mid to late game. So the only keystones that I think are really good on her are Fleet of Footwork and Press the Attack. Something like Lethal Tempo is really overkill, as she doesn't need the attack speed really. She has enough burst in her kit anyways. And then something like Conquer is really unrealistic where you have to build it up and it takes so long for her to build it up. And then once it's built up, the healing barely matters, and then the extra AP also doesn't matter. But then it's not that it doesn't matter; it's that it's so unrealistic, and then you basically don't have a laning tool from levels like 1 to like 10, and that's really what you want from Kayle is just as much safety as you can get early, or tools to help her survive the laning phase. So the keystone that I'm going to recommend is Fleet of Footwork. With Fleet of Footwork, attacking and moving builds up energy stacks. At 100 energy stacks, you gain your next attack will heal you and then also grant you 20% movement speed. So since you're going to be playing against usually melee champions top lane, it's important to be offsetting a lot of their damage early because usually you have to trade your health for CS, and then that's that. The extra movement speed is where this rune really starts being really useful, as the extra movement speed is going to help you kite the enemy champion once either you've gone for CS or you've hit them. And with that, they just lose out on a lot of damage. And it makes the laning phase a lot safer for Kayle. Since top lane is such a long lane, the extra movement speed does go a long way, as it helps you just get way more distance away from the enemy. And then once it's safe for you to turn back, then you can. And if the enemy gets on top of you, the same thing applies. And if you have advantage over the enemy and you're looking to chase them down, it also has the offensive utility, especially come mid to late game, as once you hit the enemy once, then you gain more movement speed. And with that movement speed, then you can just run someone down, especially in combination with Kayle's W. So Fleet of Footwork is mostly for surviving the laning phase, and then also giving you more leniency in terms of like how you conduct yourself in the laning phase. For the secondary rune, it's going to be Overheal. With Overheal, excess healing on you becomes a shield for up to 10 to 10% of your max health, and then the shield is built up from 20 to 100% of excess healing from yourself or an ally. So with this in combination with Corrupting Potion, maybe a Doran's Blade, and then with Fleet of Footwork, it effectively gives you more health. And again, top lane, you're just looking for a lot of safety, and where you can be hitting the minions and building this up, then it makes it so that you have this shield, and if the enemy hits you once, then they have to get through the shield. And then if they've got to the shield, you have Fleet of Footwork, Corrupting Potion, and Kayle's W to heal the damage they dealt after that. And then they can hit you again, and then with the second hit, whether it be an ability or an auto attack, then they're actually damaging you. So they have to get through more, and that makes their trades more expensive and then just harder against Kayle. None of the other runes really outweigh this, as again, getting through the laning phase is so important for Kayle, and having a tool to do so really helps her more than having scaling through the runes, which it could be in Triumph or Presence of Mind, as both would be okay for her. For the third rune, it's going to be Alacrity. Alacrity is effectively your scaling rune. With Alacrity, you gain attack speed for doing almost anything, getting a killer assist, killing objectives, jungle camps, or minions. So this stacks up like around 12 or 13 minutes. And then with it, in combination with Gunblade, Berserker Greaves, Rageblade, and then Nash, is going to just put you at better amounts of attack speed, especially come level 11. And with that, it's just with the attack speed around 10 minutes, it does help you with the lane, as if you attack faster, then the lane is safer for you, as you're not stuck in a auto attack animation, and then therefore the enemy can't punish you as hard. And then with more attack speed, you just get more attacks off, and that's really what Kayle is about, just wailing on someone. For the fourth rune, you have good options in Cut Down or Coup de Grace. If you're playing into a bruiser champion, champions like Kayle, Irelia, etc., Coup de Grace is going to be giving you better value. With Coup de Grace, you deal 8% more damage to champions who are below 40% health. You don't get crazy values on this on Kayle until late game, but once you enter late game, you're effectively an 80 carry mixed with a mage, so that's when you start getting crazy values with coup de grace. With cut down, if you're playing into obviously tanks, so champions like Set, Maokai, Scion, Ornn, etc., cut down is going to be giving you better value. With cut down, you deal 5 to 15% more damage to champions based on how much more maximum health they have than you. So obviously against the tanks, especially in your lane matchup, then you're going to be getting more value out of cut down. But you do need to think about mid to late game if the same thing's going to apply, as it doesn't really matter how much damage these apply early game compared to mid to late game. That's what Kayle's all about. For the secondary runes, honestly, you have a lot of options, but I think your better options are Resolve with Bone Plating Revitalize or Inspiration with Time Warp Tonic and Biscuits. You could have scaling options in Domination with Taste of Blood Ravenous. Ravenous healing you for a percentage of damage dealt by your abilities, and then Taste of Blood healing you whenever you damage the enemy. You could also have scaling options in Sorcery with Mana Flow Band and Transcendence. But again, I think you should be looking to get scaling through your items and through your levels versus through the runes. If the matchups like let you go for scaling runes, then go ahead and go for it. As if you're in a non-matchup, so against a champion like Malphite or something, then this would be completely fine. You wouldn't need the extra healing from Time Warp Tonic and Biscuits, and then you wouldn't need the safety from Bone Plate and Revitalize. So whether you should go Inspiration or Resolve really depends on your matchup, and simply put, if you're playing into a bruiser, especially one that can jump on you, then Bone Plating Revitalize is going to give you more value. With Bone Plating, after you take damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 spells or attacks you receive from them deal 30 to 60 based on your level less, and it's only on a 45-second cooldown. So think about champions like Irelia, Camille, etc. Bone Plating just effectively makes them deal less damage initially, and then they have to get through that. They have to get through Overheal Shield, and then once they've got through that, they have to get through the healing from W and Corrupting Potion and Fleet of Footwork. So you really do have a lot of leniency with Bone Plating against those champions. But if you're in a ranged matchup, you lose a lot of value in this, as they can proc Bone Plating with 1 auto attack and then just not damage you for like a whole 1 second, and then after that, then they can just dump all their damage on you, and Bone Plating didn't do anything. With Revitalize, heal and shields you cast or receive are 5% stronger and increased an additional 10% on targets below 40% health. So if you're really low and things are going to the wire, then Revitalize helps you and could also help your ally. But it's mostly for you in the laning phase with Fleet of Footwork, W, and Corrupting Potion. So into melee matchups, run that, and then into either tank matchups or ranged matchups top lane, you probably want to go with Time Warp Tonic and Biscuits. Biscuits, every 2 minutes until 6, you receive a biscuit. Biscuits restore 10% of your missing health and mana. Consuming a biscuit or selling it permanently increases your mana cap by 50. So this helps offset your mana cost early, especially if you're spamming Q to CS against ranged champions if it's too dangerous, levels 1 to 6. And then permanently increasing your mana is okay if you don't end up using them. Then you can also sell them. And if things get really bad, then you can use them to restore your HP, which the lower you are, the more HP it restores. With Time Warp Tonic, potions and biscuits grant you 50% of the health or mana regeneration immediately, and then using that also gives you bonus movement speed. So similar to why Fleet of Footwork is useful to give you the movement speed away from the enemy, Time Warp Tonic does basically the same thing, giving you 5% movement speed while under the effects of Corrupting Potion or a biscuit. So gives you tools to kite away from the enemy or to run them down, but in the early game, usually you're just using it to kite away. And then for the shards, it's always going to be attack speed, adaptive force, which is going to be AD early, and then convert into ability power later. And then for the defensive rune, you obviously want to switch this up depending on your matchup. So if you're into a physical damage matchup, Irelia, Lucian, etc., then you want the armor. If you're into an AP matchup, champions like Mordekaiser, Rumble, Rise, etc., you want the magic resist. So that's most of what's important with Kayle's runes. Back to the scaling options. With Domination, you could have Taste of Blood and Ravenous Hunter. With this, it would be kind of okay into a ranged matchup top lane, because Taste of Blood, you'd be offsetting a little bit of the damage that you take from one of their abilities, and then with Ravenous Hunter, it really doesn't help you at all in the laning phase. With Ravenous Hunter 2, it's based off a Bounty Hunter stack. With Bounty Hunter stacks, you earn them for each unique takedown on an enemy champion. So you kill the top laner, it's 1. You get a killer assist on the jungler, it's 1, etc. It's really, really, really hard for a top laner to build this up, especially one such as Kayle that effectively only exist in their own lane for like minutes 1 to like 28. So it's really, really hard to build this up. And if you don't have the Bounty Hunter stacks, then you're really not getting a lot of healing from this. Ravenous Hunter also only heals you based off the damage dealt by your abilities, which could end up not being a lot. So it's a really greedy option, and it doesn't really pay off until really, really, really late game, and I mean like 50 minutes late game. For Sorcery, you have good options in Mana Flow and Transcendence, or No Lorb and Transcendence. With both of them, Mana Flow giving you more mana to play with, especially come mid to late game without having to build a mana item. And then with Transcendence, you get 10% cooldown reduction at level 10. And with that, you just get more Q cast, more E cast basically. Makes your downtime in a team fight a lot lower. And since your itemization into cooldown reduction is kind of expensive other than Nashor's, then it's not a bad option. With Nullifying Orb, if you're playing into an AP matchup top lane, and if you're playing into an AP jungler, so champions like Karthus in the jungle, Nullifying Orb is completely fine. And it also might just save you from like casting your ult at different times, so then you could get DPS off when the enemy isn't expecting it, and then cast the ult. So when you can, Sorcery is your best option for scaling, but most of the time, again, you just want the defensive laning tools with either Resolve or Inspiration. So yeah, the only other keystone I'd recommend would be Press the Attack, and it's really only into non-matchups too. So think about champions like Maokai, Malphite, etc. So like in those matchups, it's whatever. Like you can get the extra damage from Press the Attack, but it's really not that important. So that's the runes for Kayle. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally all of them. If this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. And if you're interested in listening to me talk about League of Legends or watching me play it, then you can check out my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/sorrynelson. See you there, man. Alrighty, Kayle. She had her time in the Worlds, really strong, but she's kind of in the dumpster now. It's whatever.